Hey there. Ready for a deep dive into something we literally do, well, every second of every day, but rarely think about.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Breathing. We're going deep on the science of breathing techniques, how they can affect your body and mind, especially if you're dealing with a high-stress lifestyle.
Breathing, huh? We definitely take it for granted, but it does hold incredible power over how our bodies work.
Exactly. And you know what's fascinating? We've got research on everything from ancient yogic practices like alternate nostril breathing to modern tactical breathing, like what Navy SEALs use.
Wow, that's quite a range from centuries old practices to modern day techniques.
Yeah, and the research shows that even with all that variety, there's a common thread.
Oh, really?
They
Yeah.
all emphasize slow, deep breathing, often with a longer exhale than inhale.
Interesting. There must be something about that pattern that's beneficial.
Well, one of the key benefits has to do with something called your vagus nerve. It's like your body's built-in chill-out button.
Okay, I like that analogy, the vagus nerve. Tell me more.
So this vagus nerve, it runs all the way from your brain down to your organs,
Hmm.
and when it gets stimulated, it releases calming chemicals, telling your system to, relax.
So, slow, deep breathing is basically like a direct message to your body to just chill out.
Exactly. And that can have a big impact. For one, it can lower your heart rate and blood pressure, which is great for managing stress.
That makes sense. But I'm guessing the benefits go way beyond just
Oh,
relaxing.
absolutely. We're talking effects on focus, your stress hormones, even your immune system.
Now you've got my attention. I'm ready to unpack all of this.
Perfect. So let's start with this whole oxygen thing.
Yeah, I've always wondered, does deeper breathing actually mean we get more oxygen?
That's actually a myth. It's not about taking huge breaths, but about being efficient.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, slow, deep breathing, like diaphragmatic breathing, where you really engage your diaphragm, that helps you use your lungs to their full capacity and optimize oxygenation.
Ah, so it's not about quantity, it's about breathing well.
Right. And when you breathe too quickly or too shallowly, you can actually end up with less oxygen getting to your brain.
Wait, really? But I thought more breaths meant more oxygen?
That's where carbon dioxide or CO2 comes in. When you hyperventilate, you blow off too much CO2, and that causes blood vessels in the brain to constrict.
So less blood flow to the brain. That's why hyperventilating makes you dizzy, right?
Exactly. It's all about that balance.
Speaking of which, there's that one breathing technique, the Wim Hof method, that seems to mess with that balance on purpose.
The Wim Hof method, yeah, that's a fascinating one. It involves these short periods of hyperventilation, followed by holding your breath for a while.
Sounds intense.
It is. But the idea is that this controlled hyperventilation creates these swings in oxygen and CO2 levels, triggering all these physiological effects, like a boost in adrenaline and anti-inflammatory molecules.
So it's like intentionally stressing your body to build resilience.
Kind of. It's not for everyone, though. For most people dealing with everyday stress, the slower, calming techniques are probably a better starting point.
That makes sense. So let's talk about that calming effect on the nervous system. How does breathing actually influence our stress response?
Well, your nervous system basically has two modes, the fight or flight mode, which revs you up, and then there's rest and digest, which calms you down.
Okay, the gas pedal versus the brakes.
Exactly. And you can directly influence which mode your nervous system is in through your breath. Slow, deep breathing activates that rest and digest mode by stimulating the vagus nerve, like we talked about earlier.
So that's how those slow breathing techniques like diaphragmatic breathing actually work. They're sending signals to chill out.
Right. But when your breathing gets all rapid and erratic, that
Mhm.
triggers that fight or flight response, which is why when you're stressed, you feel even more on edge.
Ugh, it's like a vicious cycle, but we can break that cycle with our breath.
We can, and some techniques, like alternate nostril breathing, are thought to help balance both sides of your nervous system.
Interesting, like fine tuning your internal stress management system.
Yeah, but is there any actual evidence that this stuff really works?
That's what I'm wondering.
Oh, yeah, there's plenty of research showing that these slow breathing exercises can reduce those physical signs of stress.
Okay, like what kind of signs are we talking about?
Well, for example, it can lower your skin conductance, which is basically how much you're sweating, classic sign of stress.
Interesting. So our bodies are literally showing signs of relaxation. What else does the research say?
One of the big things these days is heart rate variability, or HRV. You know how your heart speeds up a bit when you inhale and slows down when you exhale?
Yeah, I've noticed that, but I never really thought about it.
Well, that's actually a good sign. It's called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, or RSA, and it basically means you have a healthy heart that's adaptable.
So more variability in our heart rate is actually a good thing.
Generally, yes, higher HRV is linked to better stress resilience, better cardiovascular health, and even cognitive function.
Okay, so how do breathing exercises affect HRV?
Well, slow rhythmic breathing, especially at a rate of about 6 breaths per minute, maximizes that RSA effect. It's like training your heart to be more adaptable to stress.
6 breaths per minute? That seems pretty slow.
It is, but research shows that's the sweet spot for optimizing your HRV.
Wow, so it's not just about relaxing, it's about improving how our bodies actually respond to stress.
Exactly. Techniques like resonant breathing and box breathing have been shown to really boost HRV.
Okay, now what about stress hormones? We all know chronic stress keeps those levels high, which isn't good.
Right, and that's where deep breathing exercises can help. They can lower your baseline stress hormones like cortisol and even help you react less intensely when you do encounter stress.
Seriously, that's incredible. So just by changing how we breathe, we can change our hormones?
That's right. There have been some really interesting studies on this, like one where college students who practiced diaphragmatic breathing had much lower cortisol levels after doing a stressful task.
So they were literally less stressed out thanks to the breathing.
Yeah. Exactly. And another study found that 8 weeks of deep breathing reduced resting cortisol levels by about 20%.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It is. Now, remember how we were talking about the Wim Hof method being kind of an outlier?
Yeah, what about that?
Well, it actually triggers a spike in stress hormones on purpose.
Wait, why would you want to do that?
The theory is that by exposing your body to these short bursts of stress hormones, you're essentially making your stress response system stronger, like a workout.
Interesting. So it's like weightlifting for your stress response.
Yeah, but for everyday stress management, the calming techniques are probably the way to go.
Makes sense. Now, earlier you mentioned something about breathing affecting our brains. I'm curious about that.
Oh, there's a lot to that. Breathing affects your brain in a few ways. It influences neural activity and blood flow, and by reducing anxiety, it indirectly helps your brain work better.
Okay, so walk me through that. What's happening in our brains when we do these breathing exercises?
Well, studies using EEG, which measures brain waves, have shown that slow, deep breathing shifts your brain into a more relaxed and focused state. It increases those alpha waves linked to calm focus.
Interesting. So it's like quieting the mind chatter.
Exactly. And then there's fMRI, which shows brain activity in real time. Those studies have shown that slow breathing activates those areas of the brain that are critical for attention, self-awareness, and emotional processing.
Wow. So not only are we feeling calmer, but our brains are actually working better.
Right, and that translates into tangible cognitive benefits. Studies have shown improvements in focus, memory, even executive function.
That's amazing. It's like we have this built-in system for regulating our stress and optimizing our brains all through breathing.
It really is remarkable.
So how do we apply all of this to everyday life, especially those of us with, high-stress jobs and busy schedules?
Well, that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive. Get ready for some practical tips and techniques you can start using today. So we've covered all that amazing science behind breathing, but now let's, get practical.
Yeah, I'm ready to put all this knowledge into action. How can we actually use breathing techniques to, handle the stress of modern life?
Well, whether you're a CEO, a student, or just trying to, navigate daily life, stress is a constant.
It really is. It affects everything, our mood, our focus, our health.
And that's where breathing techniques can be so helpful. They can be a game changer for building resilience, staying balanced.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me how to be a stress ninja.
Well, first, remember vagal tone and HRV.
Yeah.
Regularly practicing these calming breathing techniques actually increases your baseline levels of both.
Oh, so the higher our vagal tone and HRV, the better we are at handling stress.
It's like building a stronger foundation, so when those inevitable stress spikes hit, a deadline at work, a family emergency, you're better equipped to handle them.
So it's not just about relaxing in the moment, it's about training our nervous systems to be more resilient over time.
Exactly, and there's research to back this up. Studies have shown that nurses working in high-stress environments, like COVID ICUs, reported less anxiety and better sleep when they practiced diaphragmatic breathing every day.
Wow, that's impressive considering how much pressure those nurses are under.
Right, and another study found that coherent breathing, which is basically breathing at about 6 breaths per minute, boosted resilience in nursing home managers, which is a job with really high burnout rates.
Interesting. So even just a few minutes of breathing practice can make a difference.
Absolutely. Even 5 minutes can help. There was this study where a short guided breathing session actually reduced anxiety levels in employees better than a quick mindfulness meditation.
Huh. So breathing might be even more accessible than mindfulness for quick stress relief.
In that study, yes, although, both have their benefits, The point is that incorporating these short breathing breaks throughout the day can really reduce stress.
Like hitting the reset button for our nervous system.
Exactly. And over time, those mini resets add up.
Okay, stress resilience is great, but what about mental clarity and focus? Those are pretty important too.
You're right. And when we're stressed, our prefrontal cortex, that part of our brain responsible for decision making and planning, it gets overwhelmed.
Like our brain's CEO is getting bombarded and can't think straight.
Exactly. And that leads to, poor decisions, difficulty concentrating, feeling scattered.
Not a good recipe for success.
No. But breathing can help with that. By calming the nervous system, reducing those stress hormones, we create a more stable environment for our prefrontal cortex to do its job.
Giving our brain's CEO the support they need.
Right. And this can lead to better focus, clearer thinking, better decision making, even when you're under pressure.
I've heard that some breathing techniques are used by military personnel and first responders to help them stay calm and focused in those really intense situations.
You're right. Box breathing, it's a technique used by Navy SEALs to maintain composure in combat. By slowing down the breath, creating this steady rhythm, it prevents, panic-induced hyperventilation and helps them think clearly under extreme stress.
Wow, if it works for Navy SEALs, it must be pretty effective.
It is. And you can apply these same principles to any high-stress profession. Executives can use box breathing or the 4-7-8 technique to calm their nerves before, a big presentation.
Like a mental toolkit for handling pressure.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes to use these techniques.
Now let's talk about productivity. We all know chronic stress can lead to burnout, fatigue, and just make it harder to get things done.
Yeah, like hitting a wall.
Exactly. So how can breathing help us stay, productive and energized throughout the day?
Well, think of breathing breaks as like mini resets for your system, almost like a power nap for your mind.
I like that. A quick recharge.
There's a study that showed tech employees who took a 5-minute guided breathing break had better mood and sustained attention for the next hour compared to those who didn't.
So just taking a few minutes to focus on your breath can actually make you more productive.
It seems counterintuitive, but it works.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got all these great tools, but how do we know which technique to use and when?
That's a great question. It really depends on the situation. If you're facing acute stress, like right before a presentation, box breathing or the 4-7-8 technique can quickly calm your nerves.
Good for on-the-spot stress relief.
And if you're going through a period of prolonged stress, like a really busy week at work, incorporating resonant breathing or alternate nostril breathing during breaks can help you stay balanced.
Okay, and what about after a really stressful event, like a big deadline or something?
In those cases, guided slow breathing can help your body and mind come down from that, high adrenaline state.
So like a recovery tool for our nervous systems.
Right. By slowing down your breath, you're signaling to your body that it's safe to relax.
Okay, so we've got tools for acute stress, ongoing stress, and post-stress recovery. What about our emotional well-being? That's a big one.
Yeah, stress can definitely take a toll on our mental health.
And breathing techniques are being recognized more and more for their potential to address things like anxiety, depression, even PTSD.
It's like ancient wisdom meeting modern science.
It really is. The research is catching up, and we're seeing that breathing techniques can have a big impact on mood and emotional regulation.
Tell me more about that research.
Well, for anxiety, breathing techniques can be as effective as medication for some people and without the side effects.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. It shows how important it is to have tools to regulate our nervous systems. For example, the Buteyko method, which focuses on reducing breathing volume, that can be really helpful for preventing panic attacks.
So it's not always about taking big, deep breaths.
Right. It's about breathing in a way that supports our nervous system.
What about depression? Is there research on breathing techniques for that?
There is, and it's promising, studies on Sudarshan Kriya Yoga, which is a sequence of different breathing techniques, have shown that it can improve mood and reduce depressive symptoms.
Interesting. So breathing can actually help lift our spirits.
It can, and it's probably because it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, reduces stress hormones, and just helps our brains function better overall.
Now, what about trauma? Can breathing techniques help with that too?
Yes, breathing exercises, especially coherent breathing, have been shown to help regulate the nervous system's response to trauma. So it can reduce things like flashbacks and hyperarousal.
Like retraining our nervous systems to feel safe.
Exactly. And it really shows the power of the connection between our breath and our emotions.
This is all so encouraging as these breathing techniques are not only good for stress and focus, but they can also be a really valuable tool for our mental health.
It's a holistic approach to well-being, and it's something everyone can benefit from.
Now, before we get too carried away with all the benefits, we should talk about potential risks. Safety first.
Good point. While breathing exercises are generally very safe, there are a few things to keep in mind.
Okay, let's hear it.
One common side effect, especially for beginners, is dizziness or faintness, especially when doing deep breathing or breath holds.
Why does that happen?
It's usually because of changes in carbon dioxide levels. When we exhale for a long time or breathe really quickly, we can lower our CO2 levels too much, and that can temporarily reduce blood flow to the brain.
So that's why I get lightheaded when I hold my breath for too long.
Exactly. And it's usually harmless, but it's important to listen to your body. If you start to feel dizzy, just stop, breathe normally, and try again later with shorter breaths or holds.
Good advice. What other risks should people be aware of?
More intense breathing techniques like the Wim Hof method or holotropic breathwork carry a slightly higher risk because of the intentional hyperventilation.
Right, we talked about how that can cause dizziness and tingling.
And sometimes it can even lead to losing consciousness. So it's super important to practice these techniques in a safe environment and never while driving, swimming, or doing anything that needs your full attention.
That makes sense. Now, what about people with, pre-existing health conditions? Are there any contraindications for breathing exercises?
Yeah, people with certain conditions like epilepsy, severe panic disorder, cardiovascular disease, or pregnancy should be cautious and talk to their doctor before trying anything too intense.
Always best to err on the side of caution.
For most people, breathing exercises are a safe and effective way to improve their health, but it's always wise to be mindful of your own needs and limitations.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about some practical tips for actually incorporating breathing exercises into our daily lives, especially for those of us with busy, high-stress lifestyles.
Yeah, because who really has hours to spare for elaborate breathing routines?
Right, we need something quick and easy.
Exactly. And the good news is, even a little bit of consistent practice can make a difference.
Okay, so give us those tips. How do we make breathing exercises a part of our routine?
One great way to start the day is with 5 to 10 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing.
So like right when you wake up, before you even check your phone.
Exactly. Just take a few minutes to lie in bed or sit comfortably and focus on those deep belly breaths.
Sets the tone for a calmer day.
And it can help lower your stress levels right off the bat.
Okay, I can definitely try that. What about during the workday when I'm stuck at my desk?
Even at your desk, you can take short breathing breaks throughout the day.
Like a 1-minute breathing meditation.
Yeah, you can do a round of box breathing, a few cyclic sighs, even just 10 slow, deep breaths.
And we know that even a few minutes can help.
It's all about those mini resets.
Now, what about longer sessions? How do we fit those in?
If you have time during your lunch break or after work, try to set aside 10 to 15 minutes for resonant breathing.
That's the 6 breaths per minute technique, right?
Yes, it's really effective for calming the nervous system, improving HRV, and reducing stress.
And we can use an app or a timer to help us.
Exactly. Another important time to practice is before bed.
Oh yeah, for better sleep.
Exactly. Techniques like 4-7-8 breathing or alternate nostril breathing are perfect for winding down and preparing for sleep.
I've tried the 4-7-8 breathing before. It definitely helps me fall asleep.
It's a great technique because that long exhale really activates the parasympathetic nervous system.
Okay, what about those moments when stress just hits you out of nowhere? Like getting a frustrating email or stuck in traffic.
In those moments, just take a few deep sighing breaths or do a round of box breathing.
So we have tools for both, preventing stress and dealing with it in the moment.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes to use these techniques.
This is empowering. We have more control over our stress than we think.
We do, and it all starts with the breath.
You mentioned consistency earlier. How important is that?
It's super important. It's better to do 5 minutes every day than to try to do a long session once a week.
Small steps. Consistent.
Like brushing your teeth, you do it every day, and that consistency keeps your teeth healthy.
Okay, I get it. Now, what about our everyday breathing habits? Are there things we can do to optimize our breath even when we're not doing specific exercises?
Absolutely. One simple tip is to breathe through your nose as much as possible.
Wait, really? I thought it didn't matter.
It does. Nasal breathing filters, humidifies and warms the air, and it encourages diaphragmatic breathing, which is more efficient and relaxing.
Okay, I'll try to be more mindful of that. What else?
Pay attention to your posture. Sitting up straight instead of slouching helps your diaphragm move freely, and you can breathe better.
So good posture is good for breathing too.
And be aware of chronic overbreathing. That's often a sign of stress and anxiety.
How can we tell if we're doing that?
Frequent sighing or yawning.
Oh, yeah. I do that all the time when I'm stressed.
If you notice yourself doing that, just try to slow down your breathing.
Okay. Any other tips?
Stay active. Exercise is great for your breathing. Fitter people tend to have lower resting breathing rates and higher HRV.
Double win. Exercise is good for our bodies and our breath.
And if you like using technology, there are apps and devices that can help.
Like guided meditations or breathing trackers.
Yeah, apps like Calm, Headspace, and Breathwork offer guided exercises, and some wearables like HRV sensors can give you feedback on your breathing.
That's cool, like a personal breathing coach.
It can be very motivating. Okay, so to recap, what's the golden rule for optimal breathing?
Yeah, sum it up for us.
Aim for 6 to 10 breaths per minute, driven by the diaphragm, with relaxed, deep breaths.
So slow, deep belly breaths.
Exactly. This kind of breathing, sometimes called autonomically optimized respiration, maximizes vagal tone, balances the nervous system, and is good for overall health.
So for someone with a high-stress lifestyle, what might a daily breathing routine look like?
Well, in the morning, start with 5 minutes of diaphragmatic or resonant breathing.
Check.
Throughout the workday, take 2 to 3 mini breathing breaks, using techniques like box breathing or extended exhales.
Yeah.
If you encounter acute stress, use 4-7-8 breathing or a few deep sighs to calm down.
Okay, I can remember that.
In the evening, do 5 to 10 minutes of slow breathing before bed, like alternate nostril or 4-7-8 to help you sleep.
And try to breathe through your nose as much as possible.
Exactly. Those simple habits can make a big difference.
This is all very doable. It's encouraging to know we have so much control over our well-being just through breathing.
It really is. And it all starts with the breath.
Now, before we move on to the long-term health benefits, let's talk about one potential risk we haven't mentioned yet. Overbreathing.
Oh, good point. While most breathing exercises focus on slow, deep breaths, it is possible to overdo it.
So more isn't always better.
Exactly. Trying to force deep breaths all the time can lead to chronic hyperventilation, which can be counterproductive.
How can we tell if we're overbreathing?
Same signs as before: frequent sighing or yawning, feeling lightheaded or dizzy.
So it's about balance, listening to your body.
The goal is to breathe effectively, not just take the biggest breaths possible.
Okay, good to know. Now let's move on to those long-term health benefits of breathing. It's not just about feeling better in the moment, it's about how breathing can improve our health over time.
Right, and there's a lot of promising research in this area, so let's dive in.
It's amazing, isn't it? How something as basic as breathing can have such a huge impact on our well-being.
It really is. I mean, we often just do it without thinking, but breathing can really be a powerful tool for regulating our bodies and minds.
And the best part, it's always available to us.
Absolutely. You don't need any fancy equipment or special training. Just breathe.
Exactly. So for our listeners who are ready to start incorporating breathing exercises, what are your key takeaways?
I'd say, first and foremost, find a technique that you actually enjoy. There's no one size fits all.
Right. If you don't like it, you're not going to stick with it.
Exactly. Experiment and see what feels good. What works for one person might not work for another.
And it doesn't have to be this big time-consuming thing.
Even just a few minutes can make a difference.
Start small, be consistent, and you can gradually increase the time or how often you do it.
And remember, listen to your body. If anything feels uncomfortable or you get dizzy, just stop and adjust what you're doing.
Safety first, always.
Always. Now, in terms of specific recommendations, if you're feeling stressed or anxious, try box breathing or the 4-7-8 technique. They can calm you down quickly.
Those are like our on-the-spot stress relievers.
Exactly. For more general relaxation and well-being, try diaphragmatic breathing or resonant breathing.
And if you want better sleep, try alternate nostril breathing or 4-7-8 breathing before bed.
Those can help quiet the mind and get your body ready for sleep.
Now, what about resources for people who want to learn more or find some guided practices?
There are tons of great books and online resources out there. We'll be sure to include some links in the show notes.
And of course, there are apps that offer guided breathing and meditations.
Yeah, apps like Calm, Headspace, Breathwork are all good options. Technology can be a great tool.
And of course, if you have any health concerns, talk to your doctor.
Always a good idea to get personalized advice, especially if you have any pre-existing conditions.
So to wrap up this whole deep dive, I want to highlight something. Breathing is more than just a physical process. It's a connection to something deeper.
It is. It's a connection to the present moment, a reminder that we're alive and that every breath is precious.
It's a chance to pause, to be mindful, to appreciate the incredible power we have within us.
Take a deep breath right now, everyone listening. Just savor it. Feel the air coming in and out. Feel your body moving with each breath.
It's so simple, yet so grounding.
And as you go about your day, remember to come back to your breath whenever you need a moment of peace or clarity.
It's always there for you.
It is. Until next time, keep breathing, keep exploring, and keep diving deeper.